All right, hello YouTube, back again. I just want to show you guys a couple little things. So, as you can see, coppice, this honey mesquite here, it's right by the septic tank, the septic field. I don't want any roots going in. And here's some nopals, right? That also explains why this ground looks like a desert right here, completely bare. Doesn't look very syntropic, but that's because this whole area got dug up to put in the septic field, right? Anyway, so nopals have this adaptation, prickly pears, where they curve up and form this kind of bowl shape, right? And what this does is catches water. So say it only rains for 10 minutes. Well, a little puddle will form in that nopal and it can be held in that pad for 2 to 3 days, seeping that moisture into the pad, giving the pad just enough moisture to survive and continue rooting. So it's a pretty cool adaptation. All the pads do it. And nopals have evolved this way. If you look under a microscope, the thorns of prickly pears are actually barbed like a fishing hook, which is what makes them such a pain to get poked by. But the plant does that in hopes that if an animal runs into it, the animal will actually break off a piece of the pad and, take that pad off with it somewhere. And then in the process of that animal brushing up against things and trying to kick off that pad, well, the pad will just kind of get laid out on the ground, form that little cup shape, and then, catch water, and hopefully that plant has a chance to propagate itself. So, cool little adaptation of the Opuntia genus. So this is another tree I coppiced while I was at it. So why I'm doing this coppicing, I'm trying to get material for biochar. I don't have a wood chipper or shredder, and the species that are growing here at the farm currently, they're not very good chop and drop species. They don't lay flat on the ground. All the branches are really a mess, wiggly, squiggly all over the place. And also, especially if you're talking about the mesquites, some of them have like 2 to 3 inch thorns that'll go right through a shoe, right through a boot. So, chop and drop, not the best method for these type of species here. Biochar is going to be a lot more efficient. I do have some Lucana seeds, which do grow dry farmed around here. They grow on the sides of the road and stuff. And that's a much better chop and drop species. So once those are established, we'll be good to go. Then I can start doing some more serious chop and drop. But for now, I'm mainly using grass as mulch and then using the woody material to make biochar. So yeah, I wish I had cattle on the farm, because cattle would definitely supercharge that biochar process. And a really cool method for biochar is feeding some charcoal to your cattle, and then when the cattle drop a turd, essentially, it comes out full of microbes, inoculated, right? It's then biochar. And then if you're in a climate like mine with a lot of dung beetles, the dung beetles will actually go ahead and take that biochar, deposit it into the ground for you. So I learned that on a regenerative something podcast. I can't remember exactly where, but it's a cool little piece of information figured I'd share. So a little farm update. It's been extremely hot and extremely dry. Look at some of these nopals. These are the rows I showed you guys in the first video. Right? These things have turned into essentially nopal potato chips. Completely fried, completely dry. And these are hardy life forms, which again, they've adapted to be laid out. Those pads I showed you first, those have been on the ground months longer than these. The problem is we haven't got a single drop of rain since I put these down. It's been so hot and so dry, not even this adapted hardy species could hang through it and figure it out. There's going to be some pads that still root. There are a couple green ones when you get underneath the mesquite there, but I'm guessing that's a 90% failure rate on that planting. With that said though, I do have a pile of pads. We're supposed to get some rain later on this week, so I've got a pile of pads here and a plastic container. We had a little bit of a windstorm last night, so it looks like that container blew over here. Anyway, yep, so I got more pads ready to go for whenever we get some good rain. I mean, that's the thing. If there's any moisture at all, the pads will survive, right? And even though it hasn't rained a drop, as you can see underneath this mesquite here, these pads still have some color to them. Still green, but as soon as you get out of the mesquite, again, you end up with that nopal potato chip situation. So, you know, we've gotten maybe only 5% of our average rainfall for the last 2 months, right? In other words, we're missing 95%. I don't think a drop of rain has hit the property in a couple months. So, you know, it's been extremely hot, extremely dry. When I say hot, I've measured soil temperatures above 155 degrees. So for the European viewers, that's like 69 Celsius or something. And with humidity, being out there working in that heat, man, it's when you're out in the sun, feels like 70 degrees Celsius out here. Feels like 160 degrees, easy. So anyway, collecting material to make biochar out of. You know, have another pile of nopals to be planting. I actually have multiple piles kind of around the farm. I just recently gathered them a couple days ago because we were supposed to get rain, but it's wild because the weather report here is not like accurate, okay? And there's days where I can see it raining over there, or I can see it raining a quarter mile this way or a quarter mile that way, and then right over the property it'll be clear skies, right? So you know, it's rained north, south, east, and west of me recently, but the farm hasn't gotten a single drop. So the dry farming in the dry climate, that can be rough. So, you know, I guess on that note, kind of a good general advice if you're dry farming, especially in a dry climate, start with what grows around your area. As you can see, I'm planting nopals and prickly pears because those grow around here. Planting leucaena seeds because leucaena grows around here on the roadsides. And, you know, start with species that have a chance. I would love to have more diversity as far as what I can grow. And, you know, a water source like a well would greatly help with that, but wells aren't cheap. I don't know, I'm on the fence about a well. That's a lot of money. Wells in this area are, you know, let's say 500 feet, sometimes more. So it's not a cheap well. And yeah, it's a lot of money, you guys. Not to mention, well water is not always the best thing for a system, you know. But despite that, if I wanted cattle, for example, I would need some sort of water source. You know, cattle need to drink. On the far back of my property, maybe I'll show you guys in the next video, there's actually a cow that didn't make it. Looks like it passed away long before I got here, but I'm guessing a cow got turned around out here in the middle of nowhere and it just couldn't find the water source. But yeah, if I had a water source, I could get cattle, and I could grow a whole lot of different crops here. Right now, it's pretty limited. Although I will say there is abundance even in this dry climate. Okay, right now, just from where I'm standing, I can see 6 different crops. Okay, one is Texas persimmon right here, which is amazing. I have a cultivar that's coming out that tastes like Garcinia mangostana mixed with Texas persimmon and, chocolate pudding fruit. It's a really good one. Right here we have La Coma, member of the Sapodilla family. Supposed to taste like blackberry jam, kind of. So, that's another great edible fruit. Then we have honey mesquite. You guys, honey mesquites are 20 to 50% sugar by weight, depending on the tree. So they're a really sweet, kind of caramelly, nutty, flavored pod with a ton of uses. High protein, they're gluten free, you know, full of that protein because they're a legume. But yeah, you can make flour, you can make drinks. If anyone's interested, look up atole de mesquite or atole de pechita de mesquite, and you can see a traditional kind of native and Latino recipe there for a great, almost like caramelly nutty horchata type of deal. Another crop I can see from right here is palo verde, you guys. These edamame looking bean pods hanging up there, well, that's exactly what they taste like when they're green. Really, I tried a couple green ones, and this is essentially perennial edamame that just grows all over the place, super hardy, super drought tolerant, heat tolerant. And yeah, it gives you essentially treefuls of edamame. This is way past the season right now, so there's not much on the tree, but when those pods are green, they're abundant and they taste like edamame. See what else? Right here we have spiny hackberry, which in my opinion kind of tastes like the dried papayas you might get in trail mix, the little dry orange fruit pieces. So, spiny hackberries. They're small fruits that are kind of hard to harvest in mass. You got to have a good system for it, but that's another tasty fruit, very nutritious. And see what else. As you can see, another bundle of Opuntia, bundle of prickly pears, which of course has the prickly pears on it and nopals. So yeah, so from just where I'm standing, that's 1 crop, 2 crop with the mesquite, 3 crop with the palo verdes, 4 crop with the spiny hackberry, 5 Texas persimmon, and 6 cider oxalon, saffron plum, also known as La Coma, member of the Sapodilla family. So just in this little range right here where I'm standing, there's at least 6 crops that are, great food sources. So, I guess that's a little bit of a farm update, what we got going on, talking about how we're going to be using biochar. I'll go over methods for that in the future. Um, Again, would love to have cattle to help me with that biochar situation. Especially if you don't have a lot of equipment. Cattle are that's like a life hack for the biochar. Um, but yeah, it's beautiful out here, despite it being hot and dry. So, in the future, maybe I'll talk about some things I've learned. I mean, that was probably 150 nopal pads I put out, and I'm going to have a 10% survival rate. So, just in the past month or so, that's over 130 something plants I've lost, right? So it's like, but with what comes with that is knowledge and experience, right? Is I've probably lost more plants and failed more than a lot of people have ever even tried to plant. So that gives some good insights. And yeah, we'll end it right there, and I'll talk to you guys in the future. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.